everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. It's a Saturday, which is quite rare for us. I mean, there's Saturdays 52 times a year, so overall they're not that rare. But in terms of the podcast, the Monday night football game just kind of throws off the schedule. You guys get 2 shows a week now. You get one after the game and one before the next one. But because we had a show on Tuesday, I can't be giving you too much of a good thing, alright? Then you don't know what you've got. And that is going to be a big theme for one of the conversations later today, after an article came out earlier in the week highlighting the uncertain future of a certain player. We're going to talk a lot about that, but if you're new around here, you've not subscribed to the show, or you're thinking, why am I listening to a high-pitched British kid talking about the Eagles? This is your moment to hear more of that high-pitched British kid talking about the Eagles. There is 2 subscribe buttons on this page if you're on YouTube. There is a big red one and a little blue one in the description. For the big red one, we want to hit 5,000 of these by Christmas. I mean, we're getting close. We're really grinding out. Like I said, you guys now get 2 podcasts, a Madden video, and an Eagles film room every single week, on top of all the articles at phillysportsnetwork.com. So I'm going overboard to make sure we smash this. So if you like what we do, hit that red one. But the big button for us that really helps this podcast grow is the blue one in the description. It's free to do. It takes you straight to iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It takes about 10 seconds of your time, and it means that whenever the show goes up, it's automatically downloaded to your device. So if you've not listened before, make sure you do. Just if you like what we do, maybe you're a passive listener, you just put it on occasionally, that little 10 seconds really does help us grow this show so we can hit 2019 with some exciting plans, some big giveaways, and some huge guests as well. But I want to start with this, and there was only really one topic to start because it's been the most topical, I suppose, on social media this week, and I don't really know why, but this is what happens now, where we live in a world where everything, I guess, is microanalyzed. So according to, Camu Grugier-Hill, who earlier this week put out some comments on the Cowboys choking, and they all went over social media, that he had to rescind them. He was very, apologetic, said to Doug Peterson that he was sorry, he didn't mean any disrespect, which is fair enough. He said he didn't mean disrespect, but he's confident in his team. Now, that is fine. That is absolutely fine. The problem with it is saying, look at Dallas's history, they always choke, so we'll go down there and make them choke, is quite disrespectful unless you're thinking along the lines of 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, you can't say that without... It's like when someone goes to you, no offence, but you know it's going to be offensive. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in or what the context is. The moment someone says, no offence, but it's going to be offensive, they just don't want to get into an argument about it. Now, Doug Peterson, I think, played this very well with the media. He came out and said that he followed up with Camu privately, said that he's got a lot of respect for Jason Garrett because they were quarterbacks in the league together, and that it's not a reflection of a disrespect to the team. However, there are 2 viewing points of looking at this, and I think one is that this is a heated rivalry game. The season is on the line. Like, if the Eagles lose this game, it's a nail in the coffin, unless Dallas do monumentally choke, which Camu's comments would then probably be enshrined in the City Hall. But if the Eagles lose this, Camu's comments are going to be held to a lot of tweet receipts, a lot of freezing cold take retweets, a lot of quotes from Cowboys fans and players. Just think about it. 1 year ago, the Eagles were in a similar situation, right? With the Vikings and the Falcons and the media and how they played to those comments and they donned the underdog masks. Are they not trying to negate that same energy now? Now, as I said, I understand. This is a rivalry game. It's a big matchup. It's like if you were going to war with your little brother and whoever lost this fight had to pay for McDonald's, you want to get in his head. I totally understand that. I would want to do so as well because if you see me, I don't have much muscle, and my little brother works out, and he would probably choke slam me through a table. So I'd want to try and get that psychological advantage. The issue is when there is that disconnect, I think, between the team. Where you've got a coach trying to downplay it and go, oh, no, we don't want bulletin board stuff. And then the other guy saying, yeah, they choke, they always choke. Then you've got Shelton Gibson pretending to be Camu. It's a bit messy because the Cowboys have responded to this. You've had, I think it was Dak Prescott saying that essentially that the comments just didn't matter. You've got it was a defensive tackle coming out saying, say it when there's a hand in your face. Prescott was essentially saying that winners win and losers talk about is it winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners, I think was the quote, which is understandable. My quote for this entire situation would be, the emptiest cans make the most noise when you kick them. And that was a great bit of advice given to me by Teron Davenport, who was a fantastic Eagles writer. He's killing it with ESPN and is making my swag look non-existent because the way he positions those bow ties is remarkable. But that quote always stuck with me. That if you're going to kick an empty can, it's going to rattle, roll around, make a lot of noise. If that can's full of, I'm not going to say trash, that's probably the worst thing, but if that can's full of drink, then you're not going to hear anything. It'll be a dull sound because it's got everything inside already. And that will be the way I view it. I guess emotions got the better of him. He's fired up, he's confident in his team, he wants to go out and get a win. But by doing that, you're kind of putting a stake out there, aren't you? You know, it's like if you go to a friend and say, oh, I bet you can't down this, or I bet you can't do this, and then it doesn't happen, you just look a bit silly. I mean, we've all got that one friend that just talks it up. I remember a couple of years ago, I was going to say when I had friends, but I mean, it's essentially the same. So he got out of a relationship just before Christmas. Like, it was a week before. So New Year's, I think I was 18 at the time, and he was saying, oh, I'm going to get back on the saddle, I'm going to get with all these girls on New Year's Eve. We were like, all right, well, you're not that kind of guy, you know, we all know the story here, but okay, cool, we'll support you, why not? And he goes out, and the only thing he ever gets his mouth around that night is like a kebab. And then the next day, obviously, you try and talk to him about it. And you're like, what happened, Tom? I thought you got... Oh, my God, I said his name. That's bad. You know, you talk to him the next day, and you're like, what happened, Gary? Just as a replacement name, in case you didn't hear that one. Like, what happened there? Why weren't you getting loads of girls? And he'd be like, oh, I didn't want it. I was saying I want it. And I could just see that happening in this situation. You know, you've got to be careful. We're in a very PR-driven industry now where... I was saying this to one of my writers earlier. So Jeff Green, who covers the Union, I just got off the phone with him. And I was saying that I think many outlets are ignoring YouTube as a potential like distribution service, but instead are beginning to use memes a lot more now. You've got professional suit and tie news organisations who are beginning to dip into meme culture a little bit, try and push the boundaries. And 10 years ago, that would have ended in sackings. That would have been a national scandal. And everyone wants, like, the first minute you can get a bit of viral content, you're going to jump at it if you're a news outlet. And I really think that Grugier-Hill didn't do himself many favours by making that comment. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a huge Camus stan. I remember when the Eagles first signed him. This must have been 2 years ago. And I did an all-22 breakdown before I moved the film rooms over to YouTube. And I said that this guy is going to be a starting linebacker one day. I can see it. The way he moves, he is so laterally fast and he's so solid in tackling. He's going to be a solid starter. He's going to replace Michael Kendricks. And someone went to town on this article, and I always bring it up, and he was saying in the comments that he bets me that he's cut by the end of the preseason, that he won't be on the team, that I wasted my time putting 2,000 words into this article, and a couple years later, here we are. I'm a huge Camus guy. I did another film room on him this off-season, and I think it was after week 1 against the Falcons where he made a really huge saving tackle. Like, I am a huge Camus Grugier-Hill fan. I think he's got an incredible amount of talent. He's young enough to develop, and we've seen what he can do as a starter when asked to press in that situation this year. I think running your mouth a little bit, though, let's be honest, let's look at what happened when Lane Johnson ran his mouth against the Patriots, saying, oh, we just want to have fun. And okay, that's a great example, because Lane Johnson last year was, I would rather have fun and win a Super Bowl than not have fun and win 5, or something like that, like the exact comment. And then this year, when the Eagles get off to a bad start and Johnson's playing poorly, every national media outlet is like, oh, you still having fun, Lane? Those Patriots are having fun. Are you still having fun? And you're never going to hear the end of it. You're never going to hear the end of it. If the Eagles do not win this game, he has shot himself in the foot. And that's exactly what Doug Peterson was trying to say. I am all for trash talking. I love it. I think it's such a great part of the game. It's why I love watching basketball, because you get players really take out, these personal vendettas. But I think in a game of football where you've got 22 players on the field at any given time, providing there's, no dodgy penalties or anything like that, that one mistake, guys are going to go after him now. They're going to try and exploit him. They're going to try and get... Ezekiel Elliott is going to do some spin move or some juke, and that's all you're going to hear. I can guarantee it now. I really think the best thing you can say is nothing at all. Unless you're a journalist, because then that's not going to help you grow. So, for me, I've got to fill a half an hour podcast, so that's the worst thing I could do. But in Camu's spot, the best thing you can say is nothing at all. I understand media want to try to get these quotes, and it's exactly what's happened. The exact quote from Antoine Woods, who was the Cowboys defensive tackle, said, "It was actually pissing me off that I kept getting all of these notifications that a player from the Eagles was talking about the Cowboys choking. That don't mean nothing." Double negative probably means something, Antoine. That's cool to say in an air-conditioned locker room. They might not have air conditioning, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. With a camera in their face. Had several. Could have been iPhones, could have been Androids. But when you put your hand in dirt Sunday, it's different. I mean, he's a linebacker. He doesn't put his hand in dirt. He just doesn't. So, I don't really know what he's getting at there. So that's my dissection of that quote. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because you can view it through two lenses. Again, on half of it, it's trash talk, it's fun, he's emotional, believes in his team, wants to hype up everyone around him. The other side of it is like, you know that you've just gone all in. You know, you've been given a 13 on blackjack, the dealer's got a 10, and you've just put your bank balance, your house, and your Jack Russell puppy on the table. That dealer gets anything over like a 7, you're in trouble. So, it's so difficult. But fair play to him. I like the confidence. It's all about living dangerously, as Baker Mayfield would say. But again, let me know what you think in the comments. If you're new around here again, guys, if you enjoyed that segment, let me know. Drop that like down below as well on YouTube and hit subscribe. Also, if you are subscribed already and you're like, Liam, just shut up about subscribing. All right, I listen to the show every week. I don't need to hear it. Then do me a favour, rate it 5 stars and leave me a little poem, because that would be cool. I'd really appreciate that. Not so much the poem. That didn't go well last time on the YouTube comments. But it would be really nice to just gain some traction for this stuff. And if you genuinely enjoy what we do, it's the best way you can show your support. So we've got a couple more features on today's show. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the magnitude of this game. And to me, I think this is so underplayed. I know everyone's saying the season's on the line and it's a big game and the playoffs rest on this game, which they absolutely do. The other aspect of it, which no one's talking about, is that this is the biggest regular season game of the Peterson and Wentz era. 100%. There's no other way of looking at it. What happened in 2016? By this time in 2016, the season was over and the Eagles started going for it on 4th and goal and ballsing it up. Like, they started trying to find their identity. It was a rough season. It was up and down. No receivers. It was a weird... There was never a magnitude game. There was never a moment where like they had to win, otherwise it all came crashing down. Largely because there was no expectation. Rookie quarterback, he was, in an ideal world, supposed to sit behind Sam Bradford in his lovely little sleeves. Oh, I miss Sam Bradford. It's got to a point on that as well, if any of you have been following my stuff for a while, where I rose to... I say rose, that sounds really egotistical. My first, I guess, bit of traffic came from defending Sam Bradford. That was my hill to die on, that I believed he could be a franchise quarterback in the right system if he stayed healthy. And, you know, he was supposed to be that mentor for Carson Wentz. That never happened. He got traded. So Wentz comes in. Peterson's a rookie head coach. There's very few offensive weapons. They can't establish the run. And it's the first time for a defensive coordinator as well, where your cornerbacks are Ron Brooks, who goes down with injury, Laodis McKelvin, and Nolan Carroll. I really don't know what anyone was expecting from that year. So there was no weight of expectation. The Eagles were free, off the leash, trying different things, trying to find their identity. 2017 by this point, obviously this was the week, I believe, where it all went wrong. Week 14, against the Rams, Carson Wentz goes down with injury. But before that, if we're talking the days before that game, playoffs were a certainty. No one expected the Eagles, regardless of whether that injury to Wentz happened or not, to not make the playoffs. They were too good. That team was too complete, the record was too strong, and every other team in the NFC East was atrocious. Like, there was no way they weren't making the playoffs. The expectation changed when they get to the playoffs, and again, there's no expectation, and they go on the most miraculous run in history. But now, there is that weight of you are the Super Bowl champions. You have overcome everything in your way. You've got your franchise quarterback return. Your offensive line is healthy. You've just established the run game. You've got Alshon Jeffrey, Golden Tate, Zach Ertz. What more do you need offensively? This is the weight of expectation. If the Eagles do not win this game, if they cannot put the Cowboys away, if they don't start fast, this will be the biggest loss of this era. Because of the weight of it. The entire season is on the line now. Peterson and Wentz have got to find a way to get it done. I'm not going to put too much stock into the Jekyll and Hyde defense because I really don't think that's going to do anything, if I'm brutally honest. It's been so hit and miss this season. But offensively, the Eagles have got to keep up. And they know that. And I mean, the only way I can liken it to is another car analogy. Because that's what we're all here for, right? This is the brand. I mean, for some reason, this podcast has gone from a very serious, takey one in the space of a year to car analogies, emotional speeches, and workplace atrocities, really. But if you buy a car, okay, and you make the same journey every day, and it's great, and it gets you there, and you have this car for 3 years. In the first year, it's a cheap car. It just does what you need it to. You get it there, fine. No one really expects it to blow your mind or change your world. In the second year, you've got to take your family on holiday. So you're going to drive them to... Do we go English or do we go American? Let's go... You're going to drive them to Glasgow, which is in Scotland. Oh, that just reminded me of something funny. Sorry. So if you're in Devon... Don't forget it. We'll do America because you're all American by like one person. So if you're in Texas and you're going to drive to Philadelphia, okay? Are you sure that car's going to last you? You're probably not, but then it starts doing the thing, and it starts going really, really well. And the car gets all the way across, and you make it, and then even though you get a pop tyre on the way, in the most unconventional circumstances possible, the car gets you there, to Philadelphia, this little car, with kids going, are we there yet? And all your stuff falling out, and it running out of petrol, and you're having to have a driver change because your leg hurts, and your wife has to do it, okay, which is basically what happened. And the car gets there. And everyone's amazed. And this little car gets heralded as the best thing you've ever bought. And then the next year, your son goes out and runs into a tree. And he splits his head open. And you're like, oh, I've got to take him to the hospital. And you've got to drive. And you know if you don't get into the hospital, something bad's going to happen because there's blood. Oh, this is getting really dark now, isn't it? But you've got to drive to the hospital quick. Can you rely on that car to do it? Because you've coasted on a 12-hour drive. You've gone to work every day. But now your son's head depends on it. Is that car going to get you to the hospital? Can you trust that little beat-up, run-down car to get you there when it matters most? And this is what Peterson and Wentz face. And if I'm honest, I think they do. The offense has been absolutely rampant recently. They set a season high with 463 yards on Monday night. That was 28 first downs, which was also a season high. Wentz was 7 for 7 on the move, which was impressive. He was also 7 for 7 when targeting Golden Tate. And when he targeted Zach Ertz this year, 78.6% completion percentage. The offense is clicking. Josh Adams has 20 carries in each of his last 2 games. There is no excuse. Anyone that has been complaining about this Golden Tate role, which infuriated me, as you know, for weeks, the time for that is gone. This offense, as I put in a film room the other day, is the scariest it's been all year. Maybe not of all time, but we've got to get you viewing it somehow, right? That's how YouTube works. But let's be honest here. The offensive line is killing it. The receivers are beginning to find their mojo. Zach Ertz is having a historic season. The running game is there. You just need Carson Wentz. And you just need Doug Peterson. Those are the 2 factors. We're not going to talk about defense. I'm not going to ruin the positivity of this show because we're just going to get on some very angry rants. But we are going to talk about one important topic after we go to everyone's 2 favourite segments in the show. We're going to go to our workplace stories first, and then we've got to make up for lost time because I kind of accidentally slightly forgot to do a thank you next section last week, which wasn't my fault, alright? I'm sorry, it was an accident. But we'll start with the workplace stories. And what could possibly relate from that awful, awful DIY store to this. And the only thing I can think of is kind of on me, really. And, you know, my whole professional, my grinding, like my work ethic, it's not reflective, okay? So this job to me was a part-time thing. I was only going to be there for a little bit while I tried to get Philly Sports Network off the ground. And it got to a point where they reduced my hours, and they didn't like me very much. I can't possibly think why. I'm sure we'll get to that in very different podcasts. But I got to a point where I was on 0 hours, which meant that they could just call me in or they control my destiny. They could either give me loads of hours or they could give me none. I wouldn't have a say in it. And this annoyed me. So I would purposely, I know that, I mean, if I got to a point where I was trying to get fired, so I would go and get a different job, which I did in the end, and I ended up working for Apple, where I'm still at, and I would say very happy. I mean, it's all, you know, it's again, different story. I might be looking elsewhere, but, yeah, I was at a point where I was kind of hoping I'd get fired, trying to poke the fire to see if that would happen, and kind of just waiting to see if I could force my way out, because I wanted to give myself a kick up the rear to go and get a new, better job where I'm happy. And then that way my mentality will be better and I could really kill Philly Sports Network. So we had this huge day where the regional manager came down, assistant regional manager, office joke, comes down to the store to check up, make sure we're all doing good. And as you've known, from the cleaner story, to the weird human centipede villain, to everything else, that it wasn't a good, well-functioning store. So me, being the model employee that I am, someone had brought back a can of golden spray paint. And I'm a fiddler, alright? Like, I get very antsy if I'm not doing something. So I literally just picked up this golden spray paint and just sprayed like an opening knife that you'd use to open a box with, and made it all gold. It stunk the store out for about 2 days beforehand, and it was just left under the table. The regional manager comes down, asks what the smell is. Obviously, I don't know a thing about it. And he asks to do a team photo, and he wants everyone at the front of the store. So we get everyone to the front, and I bring this little knife with me. And if any of you are soccer fans and watch the Champions League, if you don't, please go on YouTube and just search Champions League intro. There is a very iconic theme song that goes with that. And as he's taking the photo, I get this little golden knife. I just lift it in the air and go, "The champions!" And that went on the store website. So everyone's smiling, looking very smart, and you've got me holding up a little plastic knife, spray painted gold, singing, "The champions!" And shortly after that, I forced my way out of the company. I went and got a job at a much better company in Apple. And here we are today, 2 years later. So, I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that's reflective of my work. I mean, you all know my Philly Sports Network stuff. Like, that's where my heart is 100% always. So whether that's going to be 2 articles a day, 3 articles. I mean, you've seen the volume of content on the YouTube channel alone. Like, I will not stop pushing myself with that. But a part-time job where I'm not valued, I'm not happy, it's an awful place to work. You start taking the mick after a year or so, and I kind of did that a little bit. You know, I was young, I was getting out of my system. So maybe we'll get to the next podcast where I give you all the stories of things that I did bad in that company. Because I was a very, you know, that kid in school that gets away with murder? I turned into that kid because I know I could. And yeah, that's going to be a fun few podcasts. So we'll see about that. Let me know if you want to hear more of those, because I know these stories are hit and miss, let's be honest. But now we're going to move on to everyone's favourite point of the show, which is Thank You Next, which is where I ask you for your questions about all things Eagles, and we get them all out answered in under 30 seconds. That's the aim. We want under 30-second answers. So, we're going to start with a very interesting one from Randy, who runs his own website. So, massive shout out to Randy for the question. He's now titled his thing, so Josh Adams fan account. So, it's alright, I appreciate the hustle. So, thank you next. Interesting draft question. You don't have to answer every position, but I'm curious to know, what's the number one thing you want to see on tape from every position you scout? Like QB's accuracy or DE explosion? That's a great question. Again, I think I could get it in 30 seconds, but I'll try and do my best. With cornerbacks, I'm looking for hip fluidity. Like, that's the main thing straight away. I did a book last year on corners. I did every cornerback in the first 5 rounds of the draft, all scouts, like 70 of them I think that I scouted, and just broke down tape on. And I wanted to see hip movement, because regardless of what coverage you're playing, if you're playing press, you've got to open hips early. If you're playing off, you've got to break on the ball or choose when to make that decision. And when you're moving your body, what does your head do? Because if you're going to open your hips and not look for the ball, or not look at the receiver, it opens up a whole different can of worms. Like, if you open your hips to run and you don't have your hands on the receiver and you turn your head, you're going to lose the wide out. If you've got your hands on and you're focusing on just the receiver, you're not going to make a play on the ball. So it's looking for that combination of what happens after you open the hips. Are you too stiff? Are you too smooth? Are you too reliant on the receiver? Like, what's the plan there? So that's with DBs, my main thing. Opening and closing of hips and being able to change direction and feel your way through the route tree. With quarterbacks, it depends on the quarterback. I think everyone's different, but you're looking for something that jumps out. So I think the last time I properly scouted quarterbacks was obviously the 2016 draft, and the main guy I liked was Kevin Hogan, purely because he came out of Stanford, won a pro system, and when the Eagles didn't have that high first round pick, I thought he was a great project QB to groom under Sam Bradford. The reason for that, again, pro system. He had one hell of an arm. The only thing that knocked him, though, was his throwing motion wasn't great. He kind of had an elongated thing where he'd launch it in the air and it was flung from his sort of side, which would open him up to quarterback hits. That's still a problem now, unfortunately. But what I'm looking for, really, is consistency. Are you going to stare down defenders? Are you going to be able to move around? How reliant are you on the team around you? You see it a lot with the bigger teams, guys who come from maybe, I would say even Bama to a degree, where you've got a very strong offense. I think Paxton Lynch was a great example of that, where he had a very strong team around him, playing against weaker opponents. You can manipulate it a lot easier. What you're looking for are those intangibles. So the footwork inside the pocket. Can you climb the pocket without kind of like losing your stance, essentially? Like, are you going to narrow your feet too much? Are you going to open your stance too wide? Are your feet perpendicular to the target? Are your shoulders square? That sort of thing is what I'm looking for. The basic mechanics of throwing that no matter what system you go into are going to be relevant. Defensive ends, I think you're right there, Randy. The explosion is a very good term to use. Really quick, I like linebackers keeping their head on a swivel. Are they able to move their lower body without moving their head? Which sounds silly, but can you keep your eyes focused and watch the ball, watch the quarterback while adjusting to what's going on around you? That's a really fun thing to keep an eye on. In terms of running backs, I love watching running backs get skinny. Which is, if you're going to run between the tackles, are you going to stop before you hit that hole, narrow your body so you can fit through and then burst out? Or are you just going to hit it recklessly and hope for the best? And you can see both examples of that across the league. So Quan Barkley does a great job of getting skinny, and it's what makes him so dangerous. I mean, I'm going to do a lot of draft coverage. Maybe I'll do a whole feature on this if you're interested. I know that's a little bit of a longer answer, but hopefully that's answered your question. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. Next, Diseased Eagles fan says, how do you think Sidney Jones has performed? Against the Redskins, I think we highlighted a lapse in his tackling. He's had an up and down year. I'd love to go back and watch every game. We're going to do that in the off season for a film room. I think he's definitely had some positives. Those first few weeks where he was allowing nothing his way. Very strong in coverage. He's not a solid tackler, but we knew that anyway. He's battled more injury. There are more positives than negatives. The only negative really is, I think, being too reliant on the coverage and not willing enough to kind of commit to a tackle. Like, he can make them, he won't commit and be physical with them. Dave Serenio, Dave Serenio. Sorry, I hope I got that right. I'm literally sure I'm dyslexic at this point. Thank you. Next, who is going to win on Sunday night? Why is it the Eagles? I'd like to think the Eagles. If I'm a betting man, and let's be brutally honest here, which I'm not, I would never advocate such behaviour on such a lovely podcast. But the line for this game at the minute sits at Cowboys -3. I'm jumping all over the Eagles plus a field goal. All over it. The division's on the line. The Eagles need a win. They're the strongest I've ever looked. I'm taking the Eagles because of that momentum. Zach at Wentzbrook says, thank you. Next, what is the key to beating Dallas tomorrow? Good question. I think a lot of it is going to come to Carson Wentz. We've seen his footwork has been sloppy in the last couple of weeks or so. He's been staring down, throwing balls low. And you now come into a group of linebackers consisting of Sean Lee, Jones Smith, and then of course you've got the incredible Leighton Van Der Esch, who is having a phenomenal rookie campaign as well. So I would say that the main thing we learned last time out was those linebackers are going to make life difficult. They're going to key in on Zach Ertz. LVE is a phenom, and he's going to prey on anything Carson Wentz does when it comes to staring down his number one read. So can the offense get around that? Can the defense, more importantly, find a way to stop Ezekiel Elliott? It has to be a case of marginalising it. Can the defensive backs find a way to hold Amari Cooper? That's another issue. Thank you. Next, on to the YouTube comments. Paul Toy says, what does it take to make the Eagles concentrate an entire game shoving the ball down the opponent's helmets with a smash mouth running game that doesn't stop running even if they get stuffed for a series? What does it take to make the Eagles keep their sad sack secondary off the field as much as humanly possible? What do you think? Can you think the Eagles figure out how to do these things, or are they just convinced they've overmatched an injury snake bitten? I mean, this is a very long question that goes on and on and on. In terms of what does it take to make the Eagles? It's one of those things where you don't know what you've got till it's right in front of you, I think. I mean, like, if you look at the last couple of games with Josh Adams, who's had more 80-yard games than Jay Ajayi this season now. He's had over 20 carries in his last two. It takes one positive to go, oh, well, running the ball actually works. Maybe it is literally a case of having to go. I mean, coaches can be quite stubborn. They want to believe their system, their belief works. And if you go against running the ball because of injury and someone says run the ball even though you've got nobody that can do it efficiently, you're probably not going to listen. And it takes that one jump to do it. So that would be the one thing I'd say, is that it goes actually almost eating a bit of humble pie and saying, you know what, it's probably got a point there. Chris Pagotto, thank you. Next, personally, I think Clement needs more carries over Adams. What do you think? Absolutely not. Clement is a very indecisive runner, and although he's got a lot better recently, hasn't been the same this year due to injury. And he honestly, in that game against Washington, gave up what could have been an easy 15-yard game because he was just stuck behind a block and didn't know which way to go. So I think that if you're looking at a player to pound the rock through the middle, it's Josh Adams. If you want him to get out on swings, Corey Clement. So he'll get more of the ball. He won't, overtake Adams. That's his spot. How can Schwartz save the secondary? Ask Cameron Stubbs. Thank you. Next, it's just game planning. We've got Avonte Maddox back in the frame now. I think he's going to have a very hybrid role because they've got to find a way to stop Zeke. They need a safety who can come down and contribute in the run, and Corey Graham and Trey Sullivan aren't the two most reliable guys on that back end. Against the Jaguars, I remember Maddox was an absolute beast in kind of keeping that back line all together, being the last line of defence. I think it's going to take Avonte Maddox to have a big game. It's going to take the Eagles, and more specifically Jim Schwartz, to reduce the weight of responsibility on those corners. He's got to get them off the field. He's got to give them single assignments, stop the zone, stop giving them multiple responsibilities, and to keep an eye on the backfield. Let them look after one assignment, let the linebackers do the rest, and that should be enough. Whew, that was a big one, wasn't it? I'm out of breath. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than expected. Sorry about that. But we're going to end with one last topic, and this is a discussional thing. It's not about the game. It's something that's been brought to my attention recently because there was a great article, and this is what really annoys me about living in the UK, because I would give my left arm to be in a situation where I can be in that locker room and ask the questions that I wanted, because I know for a fact this isn't egotistical, this isn't even confidence, this is just knowing that the content I could bring by being able to talk to players would be so much better than a lot of the stuff that's out there. There's a few writers I look up to, but a lot of it is so basic and so pressed from the higher-ups that they want to leave out the nitty-gritty, and that's not what I'm about. But there was an article that came out about Brandon Graham and the fact that he's obviously going to be a free agent next year. There's 4 games left. There's 4 games left on his contract, and an article came out on NBC Sports saying that I thought about it and I'm just like, man, what better way if this is going to be the last year than to go out winning a back-to-back. I feel like us right now, all we're going to do is get into it, and the sky's the limit on where we can go, and we're trying to make it special, essentially. So we don't know whether Brandon Graham's going to be back or not. The last we heard of this elusive extension was after the Super Bowl, where Howie Roseman was saying we'll get it done. I think it was in an Instagram video, wasn't it, on Brandon Graham, and he's having a cuddle with him, and they're saying they'll work on it. But let's just have a timeline for a second, right? Let's just have a moment to look back at the story of Brandon Graham, because it's really upsetting. If you were to look at everything Brandon Graham has done for this team, he may be the most underappreciated player in team history. And I genuinely believe that. It's not even close. A great example is if you look at the estimated deals. So last year, alright, let's look at the deals of some other defensive ends in that bracket that I would place Graham in. So Calais Campbell at 31 signs a 4-year $60 million deal. Everson Griffin at 29 signed a 4-year $58 million. Akeem Hicks at 27 signs a $4 million $48. I would put Brandon Graham at around a $53 million deal. at now 30 years old. Now, prior to last year, at the end of last year, he'd missed 1 game in 6 years. That was a meaningless Week 17 clash against the Cowboys. Now, this year, Graham's had a bit of a downturn. He's not been anywhere near as efficient. He's had 4 sacks, 33 tackles. If we compare that to last year, where he had 9.5 sacks, obviously that's nowhere near as productive. But the thing is, since 2010, he's been with this team since 2010. He was a first-round pick, 13th overall. He's now 30 years old. 9th year now. And Brandon Graham has seen him go from... he played 3 games in 2011. He was more of a rotational piece. And then he started to break out under Chip Kelly. So then, Vinny Curry comes on the scene. And I remember breaking this story. This was my first real story break. Was that Vinny Curry would be a free agent. And the Eagles weren't going to extend him. And the Baltimore Ravens, before the tampering period ended, came sniffing. And I'm not going to reveal too much about sources, but had a chat with someone very close to Brandon Graham, saying there was heavy interest from the Ravens, which, let's look back at who was on the Ravens at that time, Joe Douglas, makes sense. So the Ravens start putting things in the work, and I put that out as a report. 2 days later, the Eagles signed Vinny Curry to a long-term deal. Now, that time frame, again, I'm not taking responsibility for that deal at all. I'm just saying that there was interest that sparked the Eagles to almost panic and re-sign him. So Brandon Graham has a big year, and then sees Vinny Curry get extended. Alright, fine, doesn't really matter. It is what it is, okay? 2015, he only had 6.5 sacks, right? It was only a career high, it doesn't matter too much. Sure, why not? Let's reward Vinny Curry. Whatever. I mean, he's still on at the tail end of a deal anyway. He's got a few years left. Cool. 2017 comes around, and Graham's got 2 years left on that deal he signed. And the Eagles draft Derek Barnett. That's a bit of a concern, right? Brandon Graham goes out, puts up 9.5 sacks, has a career year, absolutely integral to the Eagles' Super Bowl run, to the point he made the biggest play of Super Bowl 52. And then, in the next season following that, knowing it's his contract year, the Eagles draft Josh Sweat, another young defensive end. They bring back Chris Long, just to fill the void. They bring in Michael Bennett. And Graham goes into this contract year as the most underappreciated playmaker on this defense. And now after this season, a cap-stricken Eagles, who have got a hefty free agent class to deal with, are in danger of losing him. I think they've got the wrong guy. I think they wasted time on Vinny Curry. You can see that now. They paid him way too much. They had to get rid of him. But what if they'd signed Brandon Graham to a bigger deal? The man who actually deserved the bigger deal. It's a tricky one. And again, it's one of those things where you don't know what you've got until something triggers it and you realise it's gone. Again, maybe that's a relationship and you get rid of it because you're like, I'm not feeling it, or it's not quite right. Maybe the spark's gone. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's got a beard all of a sudden and you're not really feeling the beard because... I can't grow one, so there's no danger of that. But, some people aren't into beards. Maybe it could be that. Maybe it's just that you've been together 10 years and you're like, you know what? It's not me anymore. Then you go out and you realise, hang on a minute, that kind of was the best thing. It's too late though, because now he's gone. And now he's got some other beard-loving female. It's very easy when you're in the heat of the moment to think, this is what's best, go for it. Make a snap decision. And then look back in a few months, few years' time and think, that could have done that differently. We've all done that in life, whether that's jobs, whether that's financial decisions, whether it's cars, whether it's buying things. Maybe, alright, it's even thinking, I'm really going to eat this cheeseburger, and then 2 days later, you are massively ill with food poisoning, and you know you shouldn't have eaten it because it was out of date, and it was a microwave cheeseburger. We've all done it. And I think this is the biggest whiff of the Howie Roseman era. I genuinely do. They should have given him an extension. The players that were extended during that time, where Brandon Graham is seeing Fletcher Cox, Tim Jernigan, Nigel Bradham, Vinny Curry, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, all get this attention, and he doesn't. I don't get it. And I think the Eagles are going to regret it. And there is still time. It will be amazing if they do bring him back, and I think his down year would probably aid Howie Roseman's case in bringing him back on a cheaper deal, because it's far more about the culture and less about the money. But Graham deserves a payday. The Eagles have been so reluctant to give it to him. And after he goes, Chris Long's not going to be around forever. He was debating retiring this year. You lose Graham, you lose Long. That's Barnett, who's battled injury, that's Bennett, and that's Josh Sweat. Those are your 3 defensive ends. You're telling me that Graham wouldn't be a massive upgrade right now? Barnett's still a work in progress. I know there is an area of Twitter inherited by Benjamin Solak that's not too sold on Derek Barnett, and I can understand that. You don't think Graham's the ultimate insurance policy? Where you know what you've got, you know what you get, you know with that guy or that girl you were with a few months ago, you know she's not going to mess you around. You know she's not going to hurt you or anything like that, but you choose to kind of go out and play stupid anyway. Fine, but at the end of the day, Howie Roseman's going to come back and look at this mistake if he doesn't bring back Brandon Graham with a pass rush that's already struggling to get pressure on quarterbacks. And he's lost a good one. Brandon Graham will be the one that got away. Absolutely. And he can't let that happen. So, Howie Roseman, if you're listening to this, realise that Brandon Graham and that lovely smile and the little beard, okay, may be at this point the most valuable pass rusher on this team, on the defensive end side of things. Because he's the most complete, the most experienced in terms of being on the team. He's a mentor, a leader, probably going to be available cheaper. Realise what you've got before it's gone. Because once he hits free agency, there's no going back. And I can guarantee you now, a team like the Ravens would lap him up. Let me know what you think, guys. That's going to be the discussion point. What are your thoughts on the Brandon Graham saga? Have the Eagles left it too late? Is this all overblown? Is Howie Roseman going to listen to this podcast and sign him to a deal tomorrow? I don't know. But the Dallas Cowboys are on the horizon. The Eagles in a must-win situation. Are they going to get it done? Subscribe to the show on iTunes. Whatever you do. What are you doing if you're not? That's just silly. Slam that subscribe button. Choke slam that subscribe button like you are Camus Grugier-Hill. Right. Hit it. Rate it 5 stars. Subscribe on YouTube. From myself, Liam Jenkins. I will see you on Monday for a recap show where the Eagles season will either be still alive, kicking and screaming,